Okay, we're going to start with the autobiographical couple of questions first. When and where were you born?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, June 8, 1925, in an area of, I was born in, think of the name of the hospital right now, but my parents were living in an area of Cincinnati called Price Hill.
And how many siblings did you have?
I was the oldest of 5. Next was Mary, Loretta, Kent, and Julie.
And how do you think being the oldest of your siblings shaped the person that you are today, being the oldest of that many children?
I think it probably shaped it a lot. I was the kind that I don't know at what age, that was kind of helpful. And
do you attribute any other of your personality traits to being the oldest that you can think of?
Well, some might say if I'm being bossy, I imagine, would say that. But
tell us an anecdote about when you were a little girl. Is there any, like I was telling you about when my mom and I were slapping each other, are there any anecdotes that you've been told about yourself when you were little?
I can't remember. I've been thinking of this a million times since you were here today. It's just my mother really said that when I being her first child, and she just really basically couldn't do anything. She just, all day long, she just kept looking at me and saying, I can't believe this beautiful baby is mine.
Oh.
And she just, the miracle of it all, and I think of that when I, see you with Megan. I can't think of too many things.
What was it like being a teenager in the 30s and 40s?
We had a nice life. We were not wealthy, but we were not poor, and we were able to go to a private school, which was wonderful. It was a wonderful school for that time.
Was it an all-girls school?
It was it was boys to the 8th grade. Through the 8th grade, I've had 2 or 3 crushes. In 1st grade and 2nd, it was Randolph Shelkers. And his father, and I would love to get hold of those books today because they were marvelous boys' mystery stories.
Wrote them?
Yes, wrote them, and I can't remember much about them. I bet they're out of print. And this boy that I had the crush on was kind of mischievous and would get sent up. The punishment those days, he was put in bed up on the 3rd floor of the school. I don't know how long he had to stay there. I never had the punishment. But a couple of the boys would get that punishment. Well, one anecdote I remember at 1st grade, at Christmas time, we had a crib, and all the little 1st graders had little sheep that as they did something good, they got nearer and nearer to the Christ child on Christmas, and mine was not first, and I was bitterly disappointed. A girl by the name of Ruth Ann Dumbacher. All these German names, Schulkers and Dumbacher. Hers was the closest.
Oh.
Then in 6th grade, I remember my favorite nun of all my teaching years was Sister Marici, and we did a play of Catherine Tekakwitha, which was an Indian maiden that was killed by, became a convert and then was killed by the Indians. And I got to be the Blessed Mother in that play.
Wow.
Big time. But it was very nice. And then the high school years were tougher, and they had a different principal. And one time we had, and I don't know what I did wrong, but it was the only time in all the years that I did something really wrong and had to go to the principal's office, and I hated her always because she made me cry.
Oh.
The principal?
Yeah. And I didn't feel, whatever I did, I didn't feel that I deserved that. Latin was hard in high school, and Mary was in some of my Latin classes, my sister, and she helped me with Latin.
Both the schools just right in your neighborhood or attached to your church?
No, it was a private school about when we got old enough, we walked. It was a good, about an hour walk each way.
Wow.
which was good because it was a getting. But you had, we were in high school before that. Before that, my mother took us.
And then what was the social life like for a teenage girl then?
For me, it was horrendous because I think my dominant personality was that I was kind of shy, and I came across as being snobbish. So consequently, and then going to an all-girls school and not having an older brother. I always wanted an older brother because I thought if I had an older brother, I'd be popular. At least I would meet boys.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in high school, I was one of the ones that didn't date. And one of the tragedies of my life was that I had to ask my cousin to the senior prom.
Which cousin?
Bill Murray. My mother's favorite sister was Norma, and she had 4 boys, 3 of whom were in World War II in Europe at the same time. But before that, they were wonderful to Kent because they felt so sorry for one boy living in this house full of women. But they were wonderful to him, and he spent a lot of time with them. But anyway, that cousin's 2 years older than I am, and he, graciously said he was with me. But in a school of 17 seniors, I guess I couldn't stay home.
Yeah.
I don't know to this day, but it was agony.
And then, is that when you took that trip to California that you sometimes talk about?
Well, my first trip to California, and this I remember a lot about, was when I was 8 years old.
Really?
And I went with my father's mother, who used to travel around a lot and was eccentric. But, I thought she was wonderful. And she used to come to our house and tell us stories, and she always used to tell us lives of the saints. And anyway, she took me on the train from Cincinnati to California, and then at that time she had 3 sons living out here. And we stayed with them. She didn't. They got her own apartment. She wouldn't stay with anybody, but I got to stay with the aunts and uncles who just fussed over me terribly. They had no children, and I was just, this little girl. They bought me clothes, and the one, Lee, who Chris is named after, my favorite uncle, was a salesman for Johnson & Johnson, and every night he'd have to go to the post office and mail his orders in and buy me an ice cream cone. Things like that when you're, things like that didn't happen at home.
Right.
So I was out there for the whole summer.
And is that what you
And my mother always said that she expected me to, more or less to take care of Grandma, and I wrote these letters back. And,
Oh, how cute.
yeah.
And that's when you first saw Lake Tahoe? Because you told me that.
No, I saw Lake Tahoe when I came out, after I graduated from college. I didn't know what to do, and I came out here for a summer.
Right.
And I had broken up with this guy and was glad to get away. It was one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Were your parents pretty tough growing up, discipline-wise?
Yes, very.
Very. For example?
My mother always used to, and we still talk about this like when we're together, Ken Shervany has some real stories. But my mother would make it seem like it was my father who was the disciplinarian, but actually he left everything to her. He is a lot like Kevin. I think Kevin got his personality from my father.
Oh, that's interesting.
And he mellowed out when he got older.
But as the first kid going
through, I don't want Kevin to wait that long. Well, he was just very strict. Very strict. And I think there were tough things too that, as a child you don't know.
Right.
One thing I wouldn't want on here, so vivid to me as the day is long. He got mad at me. See, I worked for him. We worked, which was nice. We got to about 16. We got to start working part-time at his drugstore. It was a way of spending money and meeting people. And my Aunt Margaret was in business with him. He had 2 sisters who never married. One was a nurse and he idolized her. She could do no wrong. He was the younger brother.
Were you named after her?
Yes, and she was very good to all of us. And she was at the store, and she always used to tell me, smile, 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 so people think you're friendly. But it was just a small business, that there are few around like this today, and your whole attitude was, these are your customers,
right,
and do everything for them, and just be nice to them, whether you like them or not. I mean, it's just a bygone thing that you don't see too much anymore. It's very unfortunate that is past, you know.
And when did you finally move out on your own for the first time?
Not till I got
really?
married.
So you lived at home?
And I just don't know how my parents stood me those later years when I was very unhappy, still being single, not getting married till I was 27.
And so you lived at home all the way
and
through
working for my father, yes.
Did you ever go away and live at a college or anything like that?
Well, we were away the college was right outside. See, I went 2.5 years to pharmacy college and then decided I didn't want to do that, and I changed to an all-girls school outside of Cincinnati, and we were gone from Sunday, but then we came home on the weekend to work at the store and just to come home. Because it was like a half-hour's drive, you know. And then I went that one summer in California, but then I came back. I lived with an aunt up there in Piedmont. She would have been happy if I never left because she was a widow by then. She enjoyed having this young person in her house, but I got homesick. So after one summer, I went back, and Mary had me all enrolled to go on to teacher's college, so I'd have something to do with my history.
Right.
And I decided I didn't want to go, and I went back to work for my father, and I did that till a month before I got married.
And when did you meet Jack?
I met Jack in October of 1943. My Aunt May, who was my mother's oldest sister, had one son who went to Notre Dame, and he was Jack's roommate, so that she took me out there for a weekend. Jack was by then a junior, even though we were the same age, and pharmacy college started late. So in September of 43, before I started college, she took me out there for a weekend, and he was my date. But then, you know, we didn't go together all that time, and we were married in 52.
So tell us about the years between 43 and 52 and how the romance eventually unfolded.
Well, we were both young. He had dated more than I did, but I mean, we were ready to. I think he was under the impression we were almost engaged. I never did feel that way, but we wrote when he was in the Navy, but we really didn't see each other too much. I mean, I went out there 2 or 3 times to South Bend.
But in 42, that very first visit?
43.
43, from then on, he assumed that you were sort of a couple?
Well, he invited me out for like a couple dances, and I went, and then when he was in the Navy, I wrote to him, and at some point then I broke up with him. But, you know, it was partly because I had never really dated other people, and I wanted the experience of dating, of having someone there on Saturday night in your hometown, a place to go, you know. And I wasn't ready to settle on anyone, and he wasn't either, although he thought he was. So we broke up, and then he went with other people, several other people, and I went a few people, but this one guy particularly for quite some time.
How long is quite some time?
And my parents didn't like him at all, and they loved Jack.
Why didn't they like him?
Well, I think they just didn't think he was right.
What was his name?
Bob Topmiller.
Do you know what happened to him?
He finally got married when he was about 60. It wasn't because of me.
Margaret the Heartbreaker.
No, it wasn't. It was him. Because he had gone with this other girl a long time before he went with me, and he didn't want to get married.
So how long were you and Jack broken up before you got back together?
Well, we met in 43, and then we were broken up for a few years, although he still sent the family Christmas card. And in about 50, I talked my mother into pretending we were going on a sightseeing trip to New York and Philadelphia. And I guess I wrote him and said, my mother and I are coming through Philadelphia, and if you're free, you know, and like to see you or something. Now, the 2 things I'm most grateful for my mother for are going on that trip with me and coming and helping me when I had babies. That's how so that trip was pivotal? We asked my father, and of course my father, if my mother wanted to do it, it was fine with him. But we did discuss it, I remember, with my father. That trip was totally pivotal.
What happened?
So we went to Philadelphia, and we stayed in a hotel there, my mother and I, and Jack and I went out, and then a couple of nights, and then Sunday I know he took us, my mother and me, to lunch at the DuPont Country Club, which he belonged to at the time. Company.
He was already working for DuPont?
He was working for DuPont. And so then that fall he invited me to an Ohio State football game. He came out with his best friend, and it was the coldest I've ever been in my life. I came up from Cincinnati to Columbus, and I had a dress and a three-quarter length coat, and I was never so cold. And we just went to the game, and then that evening, I don't know what the two of them did, but I went back to the hotel. And then Sunday I spent with a friend of mine. I told her, made up some story why I was in Columbus. She didn't know I was there. And I guess he really probably asked me to see if I would come.
So when,
why did your parents like him so much? I mean, what do you think it was that they liked about him so much?
Well, he was Catholic, he was good-looking, he was bright.
when had they met him?
Yeah, he'd come to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And he had come several times. When his Navy uniform and all, he was as handsome as he could be. And they just, you know, he was the kind of person that a mother would be very happy to have her daughter fall for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the reason we broke up is, I mean, we were not ready. It was really better for both of us. We waited, certainly for me.
So by the weekend of the football game, you knew that
So,
you really...
well, I knew he was interested. And
But were
then,
you interested? I mean, was he...
Oh, well, I was interested when we went to Philadelphia.
Right.
I had decided, you know, all these years that if he was still available, he was the one. And I think that's why I say it was a marriage made in heaven, because he did go with a couple other people.
In the interim?
Yeah, more than just dating, you know, he went with one particularly for a long time. And then the next summer, I went back to Philadelphia by myself, which was kind of unheard of, but I stayed at a hotel, and then he took me down to the shore where he and his buddies, bachelors, had a shore house, and that went well. And then Sunday took me to Father Daly, this good friend of his who was a priest, whose family had kind of adopted him because they lost a son, Jack Sage, in the war. And he took me to their families for Sunday dinner, and they had met this other girl that he had gone with, and I won hands down.
They told you?
Yeah, they told him. And that, I really think that had a little, certainly some bearing. Some bearing.
So when did he propose?
That second summer I went back without my mother, he said to me, we were sitting in his car, convertible, before he dropped me off at the hotel, I want to marry you sometime, but I don't know when. That was what he said.
What did he say?
Well, okay, I don't remember, but he knew he had.
So what year was that?
So that was 51.
And when did he actually...
No, that was 50, I guess it was, because that was July, and that Christmas, I met him, he invited me out to Clinton to meet his family. So he was coming from Philadelphia, and I was coming from Cincinnati, and we met in the Chicago airport, and he tosses me the ring.
No.
In the I say airport, I mean railroad station.
Go down on one
I
knee.
put on the ring, and then we went to Clinton, and I met his family. And then that was Christmas of 51.
Right.
And then August of 52, we were married in Cincinnati. Loretta was married, my sister, the August before.
So was
She
there...
was the first.
She was the first. She's 3 years younger than I am, but
Right.
she met this Bill at pharmacy college, and they were ready, so they weren't going to wait.
Did it bother you
They
that
weren't
your
going to
younger
wait.
sister got married first?
It bothered me in a way that I deeply regret the one thing I did. Because I was single, probably if I'd have been married, I would have had the good sense not to let this matter. But he wanted his brother to be... Bill Breeds is a big man. He's tall and he's big, but his brother was small. And she wanted me to be the maid of honor, and because I was single and this guy would have been up to here on me, I wouldn't be.
So were you a bridesmaid at all?
No, I just wasn't in the wedding. She had the girl, either his wife or the girl that this man was going to marry,
I see.
who was very small like he was. But you know, you look back on these things and you think, what difference would that have made? And probably if I were married, it wouldn't have
Right,
mattered.
but it just bothered you.
Yeah, because here I am, 3 years older,
Right.
26 years old, single, and no ring at that time.
Were most of your friends or the people you'd gone to college with, et cetera, married at that point? I mean,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was 27 was kind of late at that,
Right,
in that generation.
right. Did you ever panic and think, I'm not going to get married? Or did you sort of know?
I don't think I panicked.